Welcome to another Wealthy Boomer interview with Tina DeVito, the Director of Retirement Strategies for BMO Financial Group. We thought we'd do a bonus segment because of the enormous public interest in TFSAs this month. Welcome back.
Thank you, John.
So what happens when you die with a TFSA? This is a question I think estate planning people are pretty excited about, but there's a lot of confusion.
Well, so far with a tax-free savings account, you are able to name what is called a successor annuitant. And although it sounds a little confusing, all that really means is whoever you've named will basically just continue on with the tax-free savings account after your death. The catch is that it can only be a spouse or a common law partner. So in a situation where you don't have a spouse or a common law partner, then the amount in your tax-free savings account cannot automatically go to a beneficiary of your choice. We don't have legislation yet to name beneficiary designations. One interesting thing is we keep saying that it's tax-free savings account, but at the date of death, any income or gains accruing after the date of death are actually going to be taxable to the estate unless you've named a successor annuitant on there. So make sure that those forms are filled out properly.
Now, how comparable to the beneficiary arrangement in RSPs and RIFs is the TFSA? Why this new terminology about successor annuitants?
Well, actually, John, that's not new terminology. For the RIFs, you have a choice of naming a beneficiary who will receive those assets or a successor annuitant who just basically takes over the account in your place upon your death. So it's really not new terminology. Most people with a RIF will name a beneficiary, and the beneficiary can choose to just amalgamate their RIF together with their deceased spouse's RIF, but it is not a new terminology. And the one thing that's interesting is I mentioned in an earlier segment that it's $5,000 contribution per spouse. You can't do a joint tax-free savings account. Well, on death of one of the spouses, the successor annuitant, so the surviving spouse, takes over that account, and it has absolutely no effect on the survivor's contribution room.
Now, here's a question I had. I raised it in a column. A recent series last year on TFSAs. What if you have basically the husband number one marries wife one, husband dies, TFSA goes to the wife. Wife gets older, marries a younger man. Wife dies. Does the younger man get the TFSA tax-free? He grows old, marries a new...
Absolutely. As long as it's a spouse or common law partner, you're absolutely fine. That's with the tax-free savings account or with an RSP.
So it can go down 25 generations.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Does everybody know this? What does it mean? This must have profound implications for estate planning.
Well, it has profound implications on marriages, I think, more than anything else.
This can't be that simple, because when I first posed that question to one of the fund companies, they weren't quite sure. They thought maybe that interpretation was correct, but they weren't absolutely 100% sure.
Well, we've had situations where an individual who is in their 70s has remarried a younger spouse and passed away, and that spouse will just take over those accounts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly legal in the Income Tax Act.
Do you think that maybe it's a loophole that the government's going to close once they see this segment?
I certainly hope not. I really don't anticipate that that's something that they're getting a lot of negativity on. The one thing that I would like the government to start thinking about a little bit more is the fact that if you are a single person and you don't have a spouse or common law partner, then you can name a beneficiary on an RSP or you're limited in a tax-free savings account. So there's a big gap there.
Any other tricky things when it comes to death and this whole thing of money transferring? Did you have to do preparatory work in any way?
Best thing to do is when you fill out your application form, make sure that you do fill out that section that asks about the successor annuitant. That's the first thing. But other than that, there's really no other preparation. So
by default, if you don't say a successor annuitant, what happens?
Well, let's just say if you don't have a successor annuitant, then as of the date of death, any income, dividends, capital gains, any growth in that account will be taxable. So it'll revert to just an ordinary savings account. Your estate will be taxable on those gains, and you'll just have to file an ordinary tax return and include that income on the estate return.
So what if you're a person who's basically single and you're all alone, you have no children, no spouses, nobody, you're just a hermit, essentially. What happens to the hermit's TFSA?
Well, let me maybe clarify. Any of the cash or investments that are currently in the tax-free savings account can still come out of that tax-free, and they're paid into the estate, and then they're distributed according to the will. It's only the gains after the date of death that would be taxable. So nothing, it doesn't do anything negative to your account until the date of death, and then it's only the growth after that.
So let's say the hermit had put $50,000 in his TFSA, lonely guy, nobody in his life, dies, the $50,000 grown to $100,000 in his TFSA. Moment of death, it's worth $100,000. Who gets the money?
It's tax-free. First of all, that's a good point. It's tax-free, so no one ever pays tax on that growth to the date of death. And let's just say it's a charity that gets that. So now you've got an added benefit that not only are you not paying any capital gains tax at all on that extra growth, the $50,000 growth that you mentioned, but now your estate is getting a deduction for the entire tax-free savings account amount, so you're going to reduce your tax bill even further.
But what if this person's not charitable and he doesn't have anybody in his life to worry about his estate? I'm still wondering, where does the $100,000 go? Does the government just take the whole thing?
Oh, well, that's a good estate planning question. And the question is, what happens if you die without a will? So if you die without a will, the government doesn't automatically take all your assets. If you die without a will, then the province that you were living in determines who in your family gets your money. So the issue here is...
This guy's got no family, remember?
Well, if there's absolutely no charity and there's no family, then perhaps it will actually revert back to the state because they have no idea who would be entitled to those funds. So it's really important. I mean, and I say this in all honesty to all individuals who are single, that it's so important to have a will. Even if you think you have a very tiny estate and it's not worth it to do a will, please do a will because you can benefit someone out there with your money.
So there we have it, Death and Taxes. Tita DeVito, thank you very much from the BMO Financial Group.
Thank you, John.